So, you ever wonder how professional financial advisors take those big, fuzzy life goals and turn them into a real, honest to goodness wealth building plan? Well, I can tell you it's not magic and it's definitely not guesswork. It's a high stakes strategic process. Today, we're going to crack open that playbook and see exactly how they build a master plan. All right, let's dive right in. We're going to break this whole thing down into 6 key stages. First, we'll look at how they develop the core strategy. Then, we'll see how they assess everything a client already has. After that, it's all about finding the right tools for the job, crafting the official recommendation, presenting that master plan, and this is a big one, making sure every single step plays by the rules. First up is developing the strategy. You can think of this as the architectural blueprint for everything that follows. Before a single investment is even considered, you have to build a solid foundation. And that foundation is all about deeply understanding the client. And really, it all boils down to a pretty powerful 3-step process. First, you assess the needs. What does the client actually want to achieve? Is it a cushy retirement, starting a business from scratch? Then you have to prioritize, right? Because you can't do everything at once. What's the most urgent goal? It's only after you've nailed that down that you can start brainstorming the real solutions to make it happen. Okay, now for a step that might actually surprise you. Assessing the existing assets. And listen, this isn't just a quick glance at a bank statement. No. This is more like a deep, forensic audit of a client's entire financial life. The idea here is simple, but it's absolutely crucial. You just can't build the future until you fully understand the present. This audit is all about finding what's working, what's not, and what hidden issues might be lurking just below the surface. It's a total deep dive. And the level of detail they need here, it's intense. We're not just talking account balances. For a bank account, an advisor needs to know about any penalties for early withdrawal. For investments, they need the exact dates they were bought and how much they cost. Why? Because every single one of these details affects the strategy, the taxes, everything. Without this data, you're just flying blind. So with the strategy mapped out and all the assets audited, the advisor can finally move on to stage 3, finding the right tools. This is where they go into their professional arsenal and pick out the exact services and solutions needed to get the job done. Now, a really big decision has to be made right here, and it's all about control. It basically comes down to this: who's flying the plane? With discretionary management, the advisor is the pilot. They make the day-to-day calls, which is perfect for someone who's super busy or maybe doesn't have the experience. But with advisory management, the advisor is more like the co-pilot. They'll give you recommendations, but ultimately the client has the final say on every single move. Now, for high net worth individuals, there's a whole other level. It's called bespoke portfolio management. Forget off-the-rack solutions. This is like getting a custom-tailored suit on Savile Row. It's built from the ground up, designed for one specific person. And when we say bespoke, we're talking about a whole suite of features. It's a completely custom investment plan, sure, but it's also about having direct access to your investment manager, the ability to use alternative assets, and even, get this, negotiated charges. Yeah, it's a completely different world of service. Okay, let's move on to the main event, crafting the recommendation itself. This is where all that deep research and analysis gets transformed into the official game plan, the single document that's going to guide every decision from this point forward. So the big question is, how do you make sure that everyone, and I mean everyone, is on the exact same page? How do you lock in all the objectives, the rules, and the guidelines so there's absolutely zero confusion down the line? Well, that's where something called the Investment Policy Statement, or IPS, comes in. And this isn't just some summary document. Think of it as the constitution for the entire relationship between the client and the advisor. It literally governs everything. And the IPS spells out all the critical details, like the client's time horizon, their tax situation, and even specific constraints, like if they want to avoid investing in certain industries for ethical reasons. But maybe the most important piece of the puzzle here is the benchmark. That's the yardstick. That's what success will be measured against. It means there's nowhere to hide. All right, the research is done, the strategy is set, the documents are drafted. Now it's time for the moment of truth, presenting the master plan. This is where the advisor formally reveals their strategy to the client. And this part is always done with a formal written report. It is completely non-negotiable, and there's a really good reason for that. A written report acts as a safeguard. It protects the client and the advisor by creating a crystal clear record of exactly what was recommended, and more importantly, why. You'll find that any good report follows this kind of structure. It starts by restating the client's objectives. making sure everyone's still aligned. Then it summarizes their current situation. But the real heart of the document is step 3, the detailed recommendations and crucially the reasoning behind them. Then it's all backed up by appendices full of data. And finally, we get to what is arguably the most important check in the entire process. Every single recommendation has to pass a tough compliance review to make sure it's not just a good idea, but that it's also ethical and completely legal. See, it all comes down to one core principle: suitability. That is the North Star of financial regulation. It just means that any advice given has to be a perfect fit for that specific client, their needs, their priorities, and their actual tolerance for risk. I mean, you'd never recommend a risky startup to a retiree who needs stable income, right? It's just not suitable. There are no exceptions. And a huge part of suitability is actively managing any conflicts of interest. An advisor's recommendations have to be driven by one thing, and one thing only: what is best for the client? Not which product is going to pay them the highest commission. The client's interests must always, always, always come first. This all boils down to radical transparency. Every single fee, every charge, any commission the advisor might receive, it all has to be laid out plain as day for the client. And here's the kicker: it has to be disclosed in writing before any business is actually conducted. No hidden fees, no last-minute surprises. The client has to know exactly what they're paying for right from the start. So there you have it. That's the playbook. It's a detailed, meticulous process built on smart strategy, deep analysis, and ultimately a whole lot of trust. But here's the thing. A financial plan isn't something you just build once and then admire from afar. It's a living, breathing thing. Creating the plan is just step 1, and that leads us to the biggest question of all. How do you keep that master plan on track when life and the markets inevitably change?